Thank you, Varun. Next up, we have Gomboc AI, CEO and co-founder Ian Amit.
Thank you everyone for showing up this late in the evening. My name is Ian Amit, and today we're going to talk about Gomboc AI, the new way to remediate your cloud infrastructure issues. In Gomboc AI, we have a very simple approach. Policy by humans. Humans are pretty good about defining what they want. Remediation, however, by AI. And we'll get into why we need that separation and why AI is suitable for solving problems, especially as it pertains to cloud infrastructure. But first, I want to present myself and my co-founder, Jonathan Desrochers, standing in the back. Thank you. We're both Amazon veterans coming in from the field. I was a CISO at Cimpress, at Rapid7, senior manager at Amazon. We lived through that problem day in and day out. For 4 years, I've dealt with exactly this issue. And on top of that, in my personal background, I'm a pen tester, a red teamer, who's had thousands probably of pen test engagements against cloud environments. So I have a very close familiarity with the topic, inside and out, as they say. What we do at Gomboc AI is essentially establish or fulfill a vision where we imagined a future where a single pull request would actually solve cloud infrastructure security issues right back at the code. And if you look at kind of the context here, the key points are really simple. There's no research. There's no point of trying to figure out and learning every single cloud service and its 80 different configuration options and how it fits into your specific architecture. There's no need for ticketing. All that back and forth between security and DevOps, unnecessary. Opening a ticket for someone, basically tasking them to do the job of what you want to accomplish, forcing them to do that research and find out how to accomplish that in their specific environment. And really, no prioritization. We're seeing a whole category these days of products that are designed to sift through the hundreds of CSPM alerts that you have, valid alerts about misconfigurations in your cloud environment, basically prioritizing them and picking only the ones that you want to fix in the next cycle of that ticket jockeying, as we call it, between security and DevOps, leaving hundreds of known issues as a liability for the CISO. And again, I've lived through that. Trust me, it's not easy to basically move on and on the next cycle to sift through again and pick what are the next 3, 5, 10 issues that I'm going to ticket. And this is exactly what we've done here at Gomboc AI. Our approach is kind of two-pronged. We have a security-forward interface that allows security teams, and mainly the CISO, to define in plain English what is it that they want from their cloud environment. Really define a policy, as a policy should be. Not a technocratic, rule-based, signature-based, service-by-service, this should be the configuration, this is not the right configuration, but in simple, plain English. Things like, I want all my data at rest to be encrypted. I want to make sure that every storage resource, if it's public, cannot be just accessed or written or needs to be authenticated. Plain English policy should be. Things like that you'd find, for example, in AWS well architected. Simple statements. And that is a security policy. That's where we start our journey with our customers. And then, once that is established, our backend engines will go and basically learn all of the cloud environments, service by service, every night, catching up with every new change, with every new service, with every modification to any parameter, essentially creating the perfect understanding of a cloud environment and how to utilize each and every service in the context of each and every other service in that cloud. Utilizing that, we can move on to the second part, which is remediate always. So you write the policy once, you don't need to change it, you don't need to keep chasing rules and update signatures. And from that point on, you continuously remediate. Whether you're talking about existing IAC, existing infrastructure as code that your organization has with that huge backlog of known issues, or with any net new written code, any new IAC that's being written for deploying new applications and deploying new services. We fit it all, we fit right into that CI/CD pipeline and basically act as a DevSecOps engineer that sits there with every team, bringing all of that cloud knowledge, all of that understanding of what needs to be done in security, that through native DevOps operations, PRs, code commits, right back into the Terraform, CloudFormation, or other IAC that you have. And that's really how we implement that vision of policy by humans and remediation by AI. Humans are really good, again, at defining what they want, at scrutinizing the code that they're being sent. We always have humans checking the code that we submit as a PR. That's their job. DevOps is there to basically get a PR, make sure that, that it fits into what they need, and then approve it. And that's all really what remediation should be. It shouldn't be chasing tickets or identifying which team is responsible for what and then provisioning the tickets for that. And AI is really good at finding what those solutions are. Now, you probably are wondering, where does that generative AI, ChatGPT, LLM models fit into? Well, they don't fit in here. Let me tell you that. If you want someone to hallucinate code for you or to produce different code every time you put the same environment as an input, yeah, sure, use ChatGPT or LLM. I wouldn't recommend it. We actually utilize a different set of AI, different set of methodologies in AI, which is called deterministic AI. For the same set of inputs and parameters, it would consistently produce the one correct answer, the deterministic answer, not statistically close, but deterministically correct answer for that environment. And that's how it works. Our business model is very simple. Since we're essentially adding a DevSecOps engineer to every team, we're creating bands based on the size of the dev operations of the organization, and then have an add-on. If you have a multi-cloud environment, we essentially need to multiply the knowledge graphs that I talked about before of that cloud understanding. And to really quickly show you how it works, it's really simple. On one hand, you've got the policy engine. You typically want to start with a well-known framework like AWS well-architected, NIST CSF, CIS Top 18, import whatever portions of it you want or all of it, and then, as I said, plain English. Every resource that supports should be encrypted, protected, whatever that is. Once you have that established, obviously you can customize it and modify it. That's where the fun starts. Most of the work that we do is not on the fancy UIs and the dashboards and the whiz-bang portals. It's done in the back end. It's done straight back into the CI/CD pipelines, deliver the fixes in the way that developers like it, in PRs, in code commits, fully explained, fully documented. We're not just dropping code on someone, expecting them to understand what's going on. We're telling them what we're doing, why are we doing it, and how are we doing. We're actually going to add a link to the specific documentation of that resource so that DevOps can check and actually learn what we're doing in that place. Our competitive landscape is super interesting because it's fairly small. We're talking actual remediation. Again, not ticketing, not prioritization, not deduping. We're looking at 3 companies currently operating in that space that are delivering remediation, full shift left for the IAC, for cloud infrastructure. I can go on and on about, again, generative AI versus deterministic AI, but you're probably better off going off on our website, and hopefully the explanation so far kind of made sense in terms of what is it that we're doing. A little bit about us. We were funded last year in November. We had $5.3 million in seed funding, and ever since we've accomplished quite a bit. We've reached our MVP after 6 months. We've been working with 6 design partners, where 2 of which are currently running our code, which is delivering remediation straight back into the CI/CD pipelines and being accepted by the developers. One of those design partners, actually, you're sitting in one of their facilities, And so they tell us a lot about scale. And we're currently working on additional POCs as we move towards becoming, signing our first customers and starting to generate revenues. Thank you so much for having me today. And if you have any questions, happy to take them.
Ian, very much enjoyed that. Great to see you. First question for you. You talked about how y'all involved yourselves in the process. So one-time writing simple, human-readable policy, and then from there, remediation happens.
Right.
So a developer issues a pull request. Where do you get involved, and do they review what you've returned back from AI?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we absolutely expect developers or DevOps to review our code. They would do the same thing if I would hire a dedicated DevSecOps engineer to put those pull requests. One of our predicates, or one of our kind of pillars of how we build the company and what we do, is never touch production. As a CISO myself, I would never touch production or buy a product that would alter production. And if I could, I would fire my CIO for letting me do that. So we expect to fit into the DevOps pipelines, to get the review, for DevOps to actually do their job and do that oversight governance, which frees them up to deal with higher level problems of building products.
All right, follow-on question. So some of the proposals could be performance or cost prohibitive. I don't want anything sensitive to be written unencrypted. Okay, that's great for S3, right? We know how to deal with that. What happens when we start turning on transparent data encryption, doing things at the database tier? What does that modeling look like?
That's a great question. So one of the partnerships that we're working on right now, one of the integrations, is with products that allow you to get a snapshot or a preview of what is that change going to affect. So to your question, we will be able to show you a simulation of the before and after. Or even better, you know what, sometimes there's not one correct solution for a problem. There might be 2 or 3, and we let DevOps choose between those. Part of that choice is going to be with that metadata that shows them this is going to be the impact of performance of option 1, 2, and 3. This is the impact of price for option 1, 2, and 3. So that's our approach for that.
So you alluded at one point, and it looked like you were even potentially pulling template values from like a framework like AWS well architected. Given the fact that there are a lot of people building in the cloud that don't seem to have grasped enterprise architecture and don't seem to actually have adopted frameworks, what do you do in a situation like that? Because I think that's most of them.
Well, hopefully one of the frameworks that we provide as a starting point will speak to those customers. So if AWS well architected doesn't speak to you, maybe NIST CSF, maybe CIS 1218. And if none of them does, you always have the option to start from scratch and just build it by yourself. We do have a very easy way to define that policy. It's predicate based. It's basically a no code function that allows you to say, this is what I want in these situations. And you can go down the level of actually providing granularity per environment. So staging, prod, different projects, different repos. It's fully flexible.
So you talk about AI doing the magic of figuring out what the infrastructure looks like, but infrastructures are often super complex and humans can't figure it out. So explain the, and magic happens here part to me just a little more.
So that's a great point. Humans have a hard problem understanding complex environment. However, when you think about it, it's fairly simple. Humans just don't have the capacity or the scale to understand a very complicated environment. But when you look at it from a mathematical perspective, from a graph perspective, that's really the magic. We transform that environment, we transform that architecture into a graph in a way that allows us to identify how things are interconnected, what are the relationships between those things, and also allows us, as a byproduct, to provide capabilities that might not exist right now. So there's a question here about encrypting an S3 bucket versus something a little more complicated. We can actually add services like a KMS or provision a key from a KMS that is being used to encrypt one thing and provision that key to the consumers and producers of the data communicating with that thing, so you don't just crypto lock yourself out of it. So that's really the magic. It's that transformation of the specific customer architecture into a model that allows us to traverse it and then to solve for that model.
I saw on screen, and you mentioned that the tool kind of ingests existing niche tools, other tools that was mentioned on screen. Can you delve into that a little bit more?
So yeah, right now we're not, again, we're at MVP. So our outside integrations are not there yet. We do plan to ingest outside tools from the CSPM class, from the CNAP class. And really the purpose is to actionalize a lot of the insights from those. And our target is twofold. The first part is to take your existing CSPM backlog, ingest it, and basically reduce it down to zero. That's one of our kind of backlog zero concept. Similar to inbox zero, there's a lot of effort to start to get to inbox zero, and then we keep it there. The second aspect of it is to ingest insights from tools that do not operate strictly on the architecture layer, but also on the runtime, also on the application. And if they have insights that pertain to changes in infrastructure, again, we will take those, and we will essentially be that DevSecOps engineer that takes that insight that you don't need to ticket for, and we will create that transformation. We will create that code change that conforms to that insight.
Thank you. That's a good explanation. Thank you.
I'm just going to double click on Trey's question about, so you showed that you're remediating the vulnerabilities by fixing it, replacing it by the correct code, right? So is that, and you're saying it's not done in production?
Correct.
Okay, so there is a human intervention at some point where that's being checked?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Like, again, like any pull request or commit, someone needs to review that and accept it into the actual code before it flows into the pipelines of dev, testing, staging, prod, etc.
But then how does it really lessens the work for the developers? Now, instead of seeing the vulnerability, fixing it, they still have to review the code. So
Correct.
is it going to save their time, but they still have to go through the entire list of things to approve them and push it?
Yes, absolutely. Again, we integrate with the repositories, with the Git repositories. So we'll listen and kind of review those. Our first action when we just integrate is to basically scan everything and fix all the known issues.
Mm-hmm.
But from that point on, we will basically listen to any changes. So any change that happens, any net new thing that developers do, we will review and correct. But to your point, yes, there's always going to be someone that needs to kind of go through that. Our point is that we're saving a lot of the work of, because before us, they would basically get a ticket from security that says, there's something wrong here, you need to do something about it. But all those somethings are not practical, are not specific. We just come up with a solution, and they just need to, just like a senior developer gave them a code correction and a code review, like here's the fix.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.